The universe chose you to break a cycle no one else could. Say that to yourself and notice how it feels in your chest. It might sit heavy at first. It might sit like a small, unfamiliar warmth. It might make the jaw tighten, the breath hitch, the eyes go a little wet. Whatever you feel, know this. That sensation is not a mistake. It is a signal. It is the body remembering a timing that your mind had not yet caught up to. You have been carrying signs for months, maybe years, that something is shifting. Restlessness wakes you at odd hours. You find yourself losing interest in routines that once defined you. The things that used to light you up no longer fit the shape of your days. At the same time, there's a strange betweenness, as if you're standing on a threshold with one foot on a familiar path and one foot in a landscape you only half recognize. You feel thinner in some places and fuller in others. You mourn what you leave while also feeling the first tastes of freedom. These are not breakdowns, they are activations. Take a breath. Right here, right now, notice one physical sensation. Your pulse, the temperature of your palms, the weight of your feet. If this lands, type one word in the comments that surfaced for you. One word, no need to explain. This is a small symbolic step. It's a way to hold the moment with witnesses and to say, I noticed. Timing matters. The language of chosen can set off alarm bells. Did something mystic single you out? The word I'm using is precise. The universe chose this moment for you because your energy has aligned with a new possibility. It's not favoritism. It's not a moral badge. It's a recognition of readiness. Like seasons that open only when the soil is warm enough, your inner climate has shifted to allow a new kind of growth. That shift began beneath the surface and has been gathering force. You are not the only one who has felt the tremor. Still, your particular constellation of history, pain, resilience, and longing has made you uniquely positioned to end a repeating pattern that has been riding your life for too long. Imagine an internal engine that's been idling for years. Suddenly, something flips. The engine revs, and in response, some parts that were held together with duct tape begin to fall away. That's activation. It comes as a subtle surging at first, a tension behind the sternum, a sense that the music you used to dance to no longer matches the rhythm of the room. You might notice sleep patterns changing, appetite shifting, your taste in conversations altering. These are energetic recalibrations. They announce themselves through sensation and decision. The activation is not an announcement of an external miracle. It is the clearing that precedes a new setup. Activation loosens what cannot go with you. Beliefs that you once treated as indisputable truths about who you are, what love looks like, how safety must be negotiated, start to wobble. Routines that once filled the hours begin to feel hollow. People and places that used to fit you like a glove now feel tight or oversized. This is erosion, and it is necessary. Erosion is not punishment. It is a cleaning out. When old structures erode, there is space. Space feels like emptiness at first, and emptiness is scary because humans are taught to fear what cannot be labeled. Yet emptiness is also a sacred workshop. It is a table cleared of clutter so that a new craft can be born. You may be afraid of the void, and that fear is valid. The void is the middle ground between who you were and who you are becoming. In the void, the signals you once relied on may quiet. In their place, something more subtle will begin to speak. Intuition. Not the flashy, sensational kind of intuition you see in movies, but a softer current, an inner voice, a knowing in the gut, an alignment in the chest that clarifies which door to open and which to leave shut. At first, this voice may register as nothing more than a tilt in feeling. This feels right, or this feels too heavy. Pay attention to those tilts. They are the navigation system of your emerging self. The sequence is predictable only in how it unfolds: activation, erosion, void, rising intuition. After intuition wakes, stillness is often the next teacher. Stillness seems passive, but it is an active recalibration. In stillness, you assemble the pieces that remain. You test small acts that prove the new frequency can hold. You say no to an invitation that drains you. You tell the truth in a conversation you've been avoiding. You stop defending a habit that no longer serves. These are tiny demonstrations of integrity. They feel ordinary. They are extraordinary. Alongside these internal movements, reality begins to rearrange in small ways. Doors you expected to open stay closed. Doors you did not expect to exist slide ajar. You start seeing patterns where there were none. Books that appear at the right time, a stranger offering a phrase that lands like a seed, a job listing that matches a skill you only recently admitted you wanted to cultivate. Syncs are subtle. They do not come with trumpets. They come as a quiet confirmation that your inner calibration is finding an outer echo. This is not proof of destiny. It is evidence of alignment. You may notice these signs and attribute them to coincidence, and sometimes they are, but for you, they will feel like friendly feedback, a nudge in the direction you're already leaning. Now, let's speak plainly about the cycle. When I say cycle, I mean a pattern that repeats across contexts until it becomes part of the architecture of your days. An automatic reaction to stress, a way of choosing partners that replays old stories, a financial behavior where fear prompts contraction, or a self-sabotage loop that keeps promising relief and then withdrawing it. These cycles are not moral failures. They are adaptive strategies that once protected you.
They were useful at one time. They were the only responses available with the resources you had then. But in the new frequency you are entering, these repeated patterns are no longer compatible with the life being offered. The very energy you are drawing towards yourself is incompatible with their continued residence. This is why the universe, and I use that word again as timing and alignment, chose you for this purpose. Not because you're more deserving than anyone else, but because your configuration of experience and readiness allows you to enact a kind of energetic severing that others cannot. You are able to carry the blank space and the responsibility for the aftermath. You are strong enough to bear the grief of shedding, while also being soft enough to allow new impulses to take root. That capacity, this paradoxical blend of sensitivity and steadiness, is rare. It explains why this moment landed on you. Breaking a cycle is not a single heroic act. It is a series of small, allied choices that together disable the pattern's engine. Here are 3 practical steps to anchor that change: simple, repeatable, and non-clinical. 1. Speak an inner truth daily. This means naming what you actually feel and what you actually want, even if only to a page, a voice note, or the ceiling at midnight. Truth unfreezes old narratives because patterns feed on what remains unspoken. Use 5 minutes every morning or evening to write one sentence that begins with, "Today I want," or "What I am learning is." The practice is not about immediate transformation. It is about making honest data available to your nervous system. 2. Build a boundary you can keep. Start with one small boundary that requires minimal explanation but significant protection. A time of the week you do not surrender to obligations, a limit on interactions that drain you, or a refusal to engage in certain topics. Boundaries are experiments. They tell your environment, "This is the new range I am exploring." Being consistent with a small boundary trains you to hold larger ones later. 3. Commit to micro-aligned actions. These are tiny, repeatable behaviors that signal the future you to the present you. 5 minutes of focused breath when anxiety rises, a short walk after a heavy conversation, a deliberate pause before answering a familiar trigger. Micro-actions are not flashy. They are not a guarantee of results. They are fidelity practices. They help your body and attention begin to live by the new signal. Do not mistake these steps for a cure. They are tools for recalibration. They are invitations to test the new frequency. As you practice them, you will notice subtle shifts. Your tolerance for old drama decreases. Your ability to stay present increases, and your decisions start to be informed by something steadier than habit. You may also experience resistance. Old cycles fight back. They do so through familiar comforts, through people who prefer you in an older role, through your own shame whispering that you cannot change. Anticipate resistance and treat it like a weather pattern, temporary, predictable, and workable. There is a necessary grief to this work. When patterns dissolve, you mourn the identity that was bound up in them. You mourn the control that felt like safety. You mourn the landscape of expectations other people had for you. Do not avoid the grief thinking you are supposed to be only grateful. Grief is the doorway to clarity. Allow yourself to sit with what feels lost. Give it a name. Grief has a specificity that, once named, loses some of its power to derail you. At the same time, cultivate curiosity. Curiosity is the antidote to shame and the engine of new learning. Ask, what is the smallest brave thing I can do today? Then do that thing and notice what changes, however slight. This is how momentum forms,
not by a single leap, but by repeated tiny steps that collectively redefine the terrain. Let me describe one way this inner work often feels in real time. You wake up with a tension behind the ribs, the first signal. You skip your usual escape, scrolling through social media to anesthetize. Instead, you spend 5 minutes breathing and writing a note. I felt restless this morning. My body is tightening. I want to be heard. You say no to an invitation that would have fed an old pattern. You say yes to a short conversation that aligns with a boundary. Later, a casual comment from a friend lands differently, less like an accusation, more like data. You choose response over reactivity. That small chain of choices begins to rewire your default. It does not feel dramatic the first time. It feels like a slow, persistent gathering of integrity. We need to talk about the future self now, because this figure is not an external mentor, nor is it a destination. It is a functioning part of you. Imagine your future self as a tonal frequency you can tune toward. This future self is the version of you who has integrated practice into habitual presence. She, he, they, however your future self appears, operate from a baseline where the old cycle no longer has a seat at the table. The future self is not someone who will rescue you. The future self is a model and a resonance point. When you imagine that person, how they breathe, how they make choices, which small disciplines they keep, you create a magnetic target for the present moment to align with. There is a practical way to use the future self as a navigational tool. 3 times a week, spend 2 minutes imagining the next best version of you, making a specific choice you currently avoid. Picture it in sensory detail, what your face feels like when it relaxes, where your shoulders land, the tone of your voice when you set a boundary. Then, in the present moment, make one micro-choice that approximates that image. This is not magic, it is calibration.
Over time, your present will increasingly resemble the future because you will be training pathways, neurological, emotional, behavioral, to prefer the new frequency. You might wonder, what about the people who have always done this pattern with you? The ones who have benefited, knowingly or not, from your reactivity? Boundary work changes dynamics. Some relationships will adapt because their participants grow alongside you. Others will reveal themselves as unsupportive or incompatible. That's part of the clearing. When doors close, it is not always a loss. Sometimes it is an alignment check. You're not required to justify your growth to everyone in your life. You are required to be honest with yourself. There are also times when the external world will push back in louder ways. An opportunity you counted on may evaporate. A person may pull away. These events are not proof that you made the wrong choice. They are part of realignment. The cycle you are breaking often maintains itself by offering a perverse sort of safety, predictability, even if painful. New possibilities ask you to step into uncertainty. That uncertainty is not a lack, it is a fertile field. Listen closely now. We are approaching the place where things sharpen. The void is doing its work. The erosion has removed the scaffolding, and intuition is growing more distinct. You may begin to experience a new kind of discomfort, an urgent, almost impatient stillness. It feels like the space between 2 heartbeats. In that space, your future self starts to show up not only as a whisper, but as a living presence at the edge of your perception. She stands in a doorway you cannot yet enter. He offers a small, steady gaze. They are callings, not commands. This is the pivot moment. It is the point where most people decide, consciously or unconsciously, whether to stay in the old pattern, return to the familiarity, or step towards something that will require them to demonstrate consistency they have not practiced before. The choice is not about perfection. It is about fidelity. Will you answer the small questions in a way that honors the new frequency? Will you do the tiny acts repeatedly enough that your nervous system learns a new default? Before you take that step, there is one more internal threshold to notice: responsibility. When you begin to stabilize around a new frequency, you will be offered new degrees of agency. With that agency comes consequences. The safety nets you relied on may not be there. The people who liked you before may not like the person you are becoming. These are not threats to scare you out of change. They are facts to prepare for with compassion and courage. Responsibility here means choosing alignment over approval. It means holding to the small practices even when the outer world does not immediately reward them. It means being willing to reconfigure a life that no longer contains what once defined it.
Right now, as you sit with these words, you may feel a pull toward action and a simultaneous fear of losing what you have. Both are true. Both deserve attention. Name them both. You are not alone in this. There is a communal intelligence, call it the universe, timing, or synchronicity, that tends to conspire with people who are consistent. When you take one small aligned step after another, you begin to attract situations that fit the new bandwidth. This does not mean you will be spared difficulty. It means that the kinds of difficulties you encounter will be the ones this new version of you is more capable of solving. At the edge of that understanding, imagine a small ritual, not mandatory, not performative, an anchor. A sentence you say quietly to yourself as you get out of bed, when you lock the door, or before a meal. It might be as simple as, "I align with the life that honors my truth." You do not need to post it publicly. The power is in the repetition. If a public comment feels supportive for you, remember the earlier invitation. Type one word that surfaced when you first heard the opening sentence. No pressure, only participation if it helps you feel witnessed. There is one more thing I want to name before we pause: the kindness of patience. The timeline you are entering tends to unfold in layers rather than leaps. You will see evidence in increments. Celebrate small confirmations. Record them. They are the breadcrumbs that will encourage you when the path looks unclear. The cycle you are breaking does not disappear overnight. It loosens, frays, and then finally unthreads. You will have days when the old pattern seems to roar back into life. When that happens, remember that regressions are not failure. They are information. They show where your edges still need attention. And now you stand at a literal and figurative threshold. The world around you has subtly rearranged. Inside you, the future self has moved from a whisper to a presence at the doorway. The void has been cleared enough to let light in. You have 3 practical tools: truth-telling, boundary building, micro-actions, to use as instruments in this work. You have been invited, by timing and alignment, into a role no one else could play. There is a sound at the other side of the door. It is not a trumpet. It is a key turning in a lock. A small, precise click that suggests the corridor beyond has already been prepared. You feel a tightening in your throat, a widening behind the eyes, a readiness that is part grief and part hunger. The future self lifts a hand, gentle, not pushy, and gestures toward a single step. What you do next is the point of tension. You can stand in the doorway and ask for more certainty. You can step forward into the narrowing beam of what you have not yet seen, or you can close the door for now and return to the old room until a future day calls you again. Each response carries teaching. Each response is alive.
If you decide to move, the first steps will look ordinary. They are rarely dramatic. They are the small, everyday acts that align your present to the frequency you are being invited into. If you decide to wait, hold space for that choice with generosity. There is no shame in pacing the work. The universe's timing is not a ticking clock that will condemn you if you are late. It is a current that will meet you when you are ready to swim. Listen, your body has been speaking. Trust it enough to hear one clear signal and act on it. Do not expect perfection. Do expect learning. The path forward is a sequence of small yeses to the future you. In the next moment, choose one. Write a sentence of truth, set a small boundary, or perform one micro-action that aligns with who you want to be. Then watch what changes in the hours and days that follow. At first, the changes show up as small reallocations of energy in your daily life. The minutes you used to give away without thinking begin to feel precious. You might notice the way your attention lingers on different things, a sentence in a book, the way sunlight falls through a window, the cadence of your own voice when you name a need. Those moments are not dramatic, but they are decisive. Each one is a tiny retuning of your field. Over weeks, those minutes aggregate. Patterns that once read as inevitable begin to look like choices you have simply been making by default. Imagine a loom slowing down. Threads you thought were permanent begin to slacken. You do not rip the cloth, you unthread it gently, unhooking loop by loop. That unweaving takes patience. It also requires your hands. The universe's timing has placed the yarn loose in your lap, but it is your fingers that will disentangle it. You may be surprised to find parts of the pattern that you miss. That is okay. Missing is not the same as regression. It is information. It tells you which threads were woven most tightly into your sense of self. As your inner landscape settles, stabilization begins to look like a new kind of momentum. Not the rush of sudden victory, but the cumulative weight of many small congruent choices. You stop apologizing for owning space.
you find fewer reasons to explain your boundaries. Your emotional responses start to carry a different register, less like automatic reflexes and more like considered reactions. This is the field learning a new frequency. Your nervous system is recalibrating to prefer the new signal. Practically, that might mean three things in the outer world. Opportunities that match your new bandwidth appear with quieter persistence. Certain relationships either deepen in mature ways or naturally loosen. And your daily tempo adjusts to favor presence over frantic doing. Manifestation, in this context, is not a guarantee but a symptom, the outer world echoing your inner arrangement. Doors that had been stuck may begin to open with less force.
A conversation you always feared might arrive with less drama. A resource, time, money, a person who carries complementary skill could show up in a way that simply fits what you have quietly been shifting into place. These are confirmations, not proof of destiny. They are feedback loops. They teach you to trust the calibration process itself more than any single outward result. There is a deeper energetic mechanism working as well, and it helps explain why you are able to break a cycle no one else could. Patterns persist because they carry energetic imprints, repeated charges that create grooves in the way you respond. When you raise your baseline frequency, those grooves no longer hold with the same force. The loops that once auto-activated require an input that your new frequency no longer supplies. In plain language, your life stops looping because you stop feeding the loop. That shift is rarely instantaneous, but because your specific constellation of experience has matured into a balance of sensitivity and steadiness, you are able to stay in the uncomfortable edges where those loops used to find traction. You are willing to sit with the void that used to be filled by reaction. Staying there long enough rewrites the energetic patterns that sustain the cycle. Let's expand the practical scaffolding that will help you hold this new field. You already have 3 core tools: saying an inner truth daily, a single small boundary you can keep, and micro-aligned actions. Now, build a fuller architecture around them so you can sustain longer spans of consistency. First, create what I'll call a daily calibration practice. This is a short set of habits, 5 to 15 minutes total, that you use to check the frequency you are living in each day. It might include a brief breath sequence, one honest sentence written into your notebook, and a micro-action plan for the day. Example, 3 calming breaths, 1 line of truth, today I want a conversation that feels honest, and a micro-action, I will say no to 1 meeting that trains me. Do this each morning or evening. The ritual is tiny enough to be realistic and powerful enough to prime your nervous system. Over time, the repeated check-ins stop being an exercise and become your baseline operating system. Second, refine your boundary practice into a boundary ladder. A ladder is helpful because you rarely jump to the highest rung without practice. Start with a first rung that is simple. Protect 30 minutes of your week where you do not respond to messages. The next rung is a slightly larger boundary. Reduce contact with one person who consistently recompresses your growth. The next rung might be to refuse a recurring obligation that drains your attention. Each rung prepares you for the next level. Celebrate each step. Notice how the environment adjusts as you hold a new edge. Boundaries are not punishments, they are clarifying acts.
They teach others how to meet you, while also revealing who in your life can or cannot change alongside you. Third, formalize micro-aligned actions into a list you can repeat. These are not random, they are directed. Make a list of 10 small behaviors that feel like the future self. Keep them where you can see them. When you feel the old pattern rising, choose one. Examples: take a 5-minute cooling walk. Put your hand on your heart and name 1 need without explanation. Write the 1-sentence truth and then lock it in a drawer. Offer a short, calm correction in a conversation rather than an emotional cascade. Or simply take 3 breaths before you respond to a triggering message. These practices are exercises in fidelity. They teach your body that you are available to new ways of being. You may wonder how to measure progress without turning it into a performance. Progress is not a straight line. It is not a scoreboard. Instead, use curiosity as your measuring tool. Ask questions like, what feels different today? Or, where did I choose differently in the last week? And make short notes. Keep a small victory log. It does not need to be public. It simply needs to exist. When you look back over a month, the accumulation will be visible, even if on many days the change felt invisible. Expect resistance. Old cycles do not step aside politely. They escalate or seduce. They may present as nostalgia, remember when this worked, or as sabotage, you never finish what you start. They may materialize through other people who benefited from your old role. Anticipate these returns without judgment.
Name them out loud. I notice the old loop asking me to step back into a familiar role. Naming robs the pattern of its covert power. It detaches the energy from identification. Then choose one micro-action to interrupt the loop. Grief will come. You already know this, but I will say it plainly. Grief is part of the work and not a detour around it. There is an archetypal mourning when you remove a pattern that once buffered pain. You lose the coping mechanism, even as you gain freedom. That loss feels heavy because it is real. Treat it with rituals that respect endings. Write a letter to an old version of yourself and then burn it or fold it into a drawer. Conduct a small ceremony where you name 3 ways the old pattern kept you safe and 3 costs it imposed. Do these things publicly, privately, with a trusted friend or alone. The depth of your grief is proportional to the depth of your life change. Let it be a measure of the significance of your shift, not a reason to retreat. Relationships will reconfigure. Some will deepen, some will loosen. Both outcomes are part of alignment. You are not tasked with converting others to your new frequency. You are tasked with being honest about your needs. In practical terms, this often involves short, clear conversations where you describe what you need and what you cannot do anymore.
Use I statements. I need more time to recover after social events, and avoid persuasive tactics. People who care for you will either meet you or show their limits. Both are useful data. There is also social pressure to justify change, especially if you succeeded within the old cycle at certain levels. Expect questions like, why are you changing what worked? Answer them simply when you must. I'm aligning with what feels truthful now. A brief answer discerns debate and conserves your energy. You do not owe long explanations to people invested in your old layout. As the new field stabilizes, notice how decision-making becomes different. Choices are less reactive, less defensive. You may find a growing patience for complexity. The old cycle thrived on black and white urgency. The emerging timeline tolerates nuance. That means you might hold an unresolved tension for longer, choosing to sit with it rather than resolve it through old reflexes. This kind of patience is itself a practice. It is a discipline of presence. Now, a practical expansion on working with the future self. In addition to short visualization, create a future self conversation. Once a week, ideally in a quiet space, imagine a conversation with the version of you who has already lived through this transition. Ask 2 questions. What was hardest for you in the transition, and what simple thing most helped you hold the field? Listen inwardly. The answers may come as sensory impressions, an image, a phrase, a bodily relaxation. Journal what you hear. Then choose one specific behavior from the answer to try that week. This exercise trains your imagination to be a resource rather than an escape. It helps the present you borrow strategies from the version of you who has already learned the lesson. Pay attention to synchronicities, but keep them sober. Synchronicities are gentle confirmations, not proof texts. When they appear, note them. When they do not appear, do not assume miscalibration. Some days the world will feel silent. Other days it will come alive with small echoes of your inner shift. Take them as friendly feedback and move on. Over time, you will learn the quality of the signals that matter to you, those that feel nourishing rather than distracting. There is a particular kind of stabilization to watch for, emotional neutrality. Not numbness, but a steadiness where you can observe your feelings without instantly being carried away by them. This neutral space is essential for breaking cycles because it interrupts the feedback loop that feeds old patterns. Practice noticing your feelings with language. Right now, I am feeling anxious, or I notice sadness. Labeling calms the limbic system. It creates a gap between impulse and action. That gap is the place where new choices are born. Practical ritual work can be useful here too. Rituals create predictable containers for unpredictable feelings. They do not need to be ornate.
A ritual could be as simple as lighting a candle and saying, I honor the ending, I welcome the beginning. Or it could be a 5-minute walk where you name 3 things you are releasing and 3 things you are inviting. Rituals are not magic. They are psychological and energetic tools that help the nervous system register change. Use them consistently for 3 weeks and note what shifts. Let's revisit the 3 core steps and deepen them into a weekly sustainable pattern. 1. Inner truth. Turn this into a weekly inventory. Each Sunday evening, write 3 sentences that begin with, this week I noticed, I felt, and I need. Keep them brief. These inventories track the micro variations in your inner landscape and prevent the accumulation of unnamed material that otherwise fuels old cycles. Over months, the inventory becomes a map. 2. Boundary. Make one boundary non-negotiable for 30 days. Choose something small but meaningful. No weekday evening work emails or 1 day per week without social media. Mark it in your calendar and treat it as a non-negotiable appointment. The calendar practice externalizes the boundary, making it less prone to erosion. After 30 days, evaluate. Did it protect what you needed? If yes, extend or create a new boundary. 3. Micro-actions. Commit to 3 micro-actions you will do daily and 1 micro-action you will do every time an old pattern triggers. For instance, daily, 5-minute breath, 1 sentence of truth, and a 2-minute walk. Trigger response. Take 3 breaths, then name the emotion before reacting. Repetition turns these micro-actions into new defaults. You should also cultivate a community of practice. This does not mean public declarations for validation. It means finding 1 or 2 people who can hold you in accountability and compassion. A friend who will remind you to check your boundary, a partner who will respect your request for time, or a coach who can help you unpack stubborn recurrences. The right witness helps you see blind spots and honors your progress without pressuring performance. There are practical moments of decision that will test you. You will be offered a shortcut back into the old cycle, an emotional quick fix, a familiar script, an invitation to wear the old armor. In those moments, pause. Literally place a hand on your chest. Name the pull. Ask, is this option moving me toward the timeline I'm claiming or away from it? Then act accordingly. Even if your answer is to step back, do it with intention. Intention matters more than absolute success on the first try. At a certain point, the world will begin to mirror your internal shift more boldly. You may be offered roles or tasks that require you to operate from the new frequency. They may feel intimidating because they ask for a greater degree of integrity than your old life demanded. Consider these invitations carefully.
They are not chores to prove your worth. They are opportunities to test the new field in meaningful ways. Say yes where you genuinely want to stretch, and say no where the fit is not right. The discipline of discernment is one of the highest forms of respect you can show yourself. Remember the ethics of this work. Breaking a cycle is not about excusing harm or avoiding accountability. It is about refusing to repeat patterns that harm you or others. If your cycle included behaviors that hurt people, part of breaking it is making amends where possible and taking honest steps to repair. That process requires humility and sometimes outside help. It may also require professional support if behaviors are complex or have caused significant harm. The energetic framework we use here is an accompaniment to, not a replacement for, responsible action when needed. Now, let's return to the imagery of the future self making a steady presence. As you practice, something interesting tends to happen. The past self who benefited from the cycle begins to recognize the new presence. They do not vanish overnight. Instead, they start to step back with curiosity rather than panic. You may feel them as a part of you that still fears loss. Invite that part in for a conversation. Ask, what do you need from me to feel safe while we change? The answer might be a concrete reassurance, time to process, a ritual, or a reminder of small practices that hold continuity. Treat your own internal system with tenderness. You are not trying to punish the past self into obedience. You are gently supervising a transition. There may be practical setbacks, financial tightness, a relationship that frays, a job shift that tests your new boundaries. These are not signs that you chose wrong. They are part of reconfiguration. Respond to setbacks with curiosity and with practical adjustments. Tight finances require budgeting and creativity. A frayed relationship may require limits and sometimes compassionate distance. A job shift may demand new skills. See each challenge as feedback, an invitation to refine your practice, not proof of failure. As the stabilization phase deepens, a new responsibility emerges: stewardship. You will be entrusted with your own life differently. That stewardship is not glamorous. It is mostly about daily consistency, small triage choices, and fidelity to your inner calibration. It means showing up for the small acts even when they feel unremarkable. Stewardship also means using your example ethically. If your breaking of the cycle becomes a model for others, offer it with humility. Share the process, not the product. Emphasize the day-to-day practices more than any broadcasted outcome. We have spoken about public rituals a little. Now I will offer a gentle, optional, symbolic anchor to mark this moment. This is not required. It is not a performance. It is a personal act with communal possibility if you choose to share it.
When you are ready, say quietly, out loud or in your head, or write on a piece of paper, I step into the reality that was waiting for me. If it resonates, you may post that sentence where you like, as a private note or as a public comment. If you post it, know that you are not being judged. You are simply naming an intention and allowing witnesses. Do this only if it feels right. The energy of declaration is a signal. It tells your nervous system and the world that you are aligning with a timeline. The declaration itself is not a guarantee. It is a ceremonial amplifier for the choices you are already making. Before you consider taking that step publicly, there are a few cautions to keep in mind. Do not treat the declaration as a substitute for practice. Do not rely on the sentence to do the work for you, and do not use the ritual as a way to pressure others into validating your path. The value of the declaration is symbolic and personal, an act to help you mark the threshold, to gather your intention into a simple phrase. If you choose not to declare publicly, that is perfectly fine. The work remains the same. You can keep a private token, a written sentence in a drawer, a pebble on your nightstand, or a routine breath sequence that acts as a witness without public visibility. As you continue, cultivate a posture of compassion toward yourself. The work of breaking deep patterns is tiring and, at times, lonely. You may feel like you are carrying an internal load that others around you do not see. That is normal. Create small replenishing practices, a weekly walk in a place that feels steady, a monthly conversation with a trusted friend who can hold perspective, a ritual bath or a short digital detox. Replenishment is not indulgence, it is a necessary resource for continued fidelity. Let me highlight 3 situational scripts you can use when the old pattern calls and the moment requires a boundary or a micro-action. These scripts are short statements you can adapt. For setting a boundary with time, I'm not available for that tonight. I'm choosing to rest. No long explanation needed. For answering a triggering comment, I hear you. I'm stepping back to consider this before I respond. Put space between stimulus and reply. For declining an invitation that re-engages the pattern, thank you for thinking of me, but I'm going to pass this time. Keep it simple and consistent. Scripts reduce friction. They help you act from the new field instead of improvising from an older habit. There will be days of doubt. Doubt is part of healthy recalibration. When doubt arrives, use it as a teacher. Ask it, which part of me is afraid, and what evidence am I really missing? Often doubt signals that you need more data, not from the world, but from your practice. Increase one micro-practice for a few days and notice how the doubt changes. That simple action often gives the nervous system enough reassurance to proceed. Reflect on the long view.
Breaking a cycle is not a one-off achievement, but a lifelong relationship to integrity. There will be seasons of consolidation and seasons of challenge. Sometimes the cycle will reappear in a new form. Old grooves can resurface under new stress. When that happens, treat it as a recalibration, not a catastrophe. Return to the essentials: truth inventory, boundary ladder, micro-actions, and the future self-conversation. These are the recurring maintenance practices that keep your energy field aligned. As your timeline continues to clarify, you may notice a shifting capacity for joy. Joy that arises now is often less about immediate gratification and more about deep consonance, a sense that what you do aligns with who you are becoming. These moments can feel quietly ecstatic, a conversation that lands, a piece of work that fits, a morning where your breath feels spacious. Recognize these moments and let them be anchors. They are signs that the new way of being has substance. Let us speak about accountability one more time, because it matters. Accountability here is not shame-based, it is curiosity-based. When you find yourself slipping back into an old pattern, ask gently, what was the trigger? What boundary did I ignore? What small action would have interrupted this? Answer without judgment. Then choose one micro-action and try again. Over time, your default mode will shift toward curiosity and repair rather than self-recrimination. You may encounter critics, people who interpret your change as aloofness, privilege, or inconsistency. Respond with succinct clarity. I'm doing a different inner work right now. That phrase states the truth without invitation to argument. If necessary, protect yourself by limiting exposure to conversations that drain you. Remember that your duty is first to your alignment, then to the comfort of others. As you round toward a more settled rhythm, there will be opportunities to extend this practice outward. You might mentor someone through parts of their own cycle, offer steady presence to a friend, or teach a brief practice that helped you.
If you choose to share, do it with humility. Offer what you know without insisting it is the only way. People need permission to find their own form of alignment. Now, as you hold all of this, return to the essence of the title that brought you here. The universe chose you to break a cycle no one else could. Say it again quietly and feel the tone of the sentence shift inside you. Chosen in this usage means called by timing and readiness. It means that the constellation of your experiences and capacities have arranged into a unique leverage point. No moral superiority is implied. No guarantee is promised. Instead, there is an invitation and a responsibility. If this invitation feels true for you, if your body registers some recognition, then here is an optional ritual to close this session, a compassionate, practical finishing act. Take a breath.
Place your hand over your heart. Say or write the sentence, "I step into the reality that was waiting for me." If you would like to witness this in community, post that sentence as a comment now, knowing you are only participating if it feels right. Do not feel pressured. No public declaration is required to enact change. The power is in the choice itself and the small daily steps that follow. Finally, some closing realities to hold with softness. The path ahead is neither simpler nor harder than your capacity to practice. It is simply reshaped. You may be tired, rest. You may be exhilarated, celebrate. You may both grieve and hunger at once. Sit with both. The breaking of a long-term pattern is a form of rebirthing. It is messy, sacred, and profoundly ordinary. You were chosen by timing and readiness, not because you are more deserving, but because you are uniquely poised to hold the blankness, to tend the grief, and to hold the future self steady enough for others to learn that a different way is possible. That is the precise work no one else could do for you. It requires your presence, your willingness to feel, and your practice of small aligned acts repeated over time. So choose one small thing now. Write one sentence of truth. Set one small boundary you can keep for a week. Do one micro action that signals the future self. Then, if it feels right, declare, "I step into the reality that was waiting for me." Say it quietly, write it down, or share it in the comments as a symbolic anchor. Go forward with compassion for your past, curiosity for your present, and fidelity to the small, steady acts that will shape your next months. The current is moving. Your choices are the oars. The new timeline is not out there waiting to be discovered. It is already forming around the person you are practicing to become. Meet it with honesty, with patience, and with the courage to keep choosing differently, again and again.